Minutes past 4, and I have a very special guest on the line, and this is the first time we've got to use this software in the studio in drive time. We have Mark James on the line from New Zealand. How are you this afternoon, Mark?
I'm very well, Mick. And yourself?
Very, very good. And of course, Mark James, he's from Creation Ministries International, and like most of the CMI guys, super smart. He's got an honours in organic chemistry from Victoria University of Wellington. And I guess if you have any questions, maybe questions that relate to, chemical reaction type stuff, it could be a good one to throw at Mark. And of course, if you do have any questions, please send them through to our text line 0401 949 949. Now, Mark, as you've probably heard, we're in our brand new studios at Erina now, and that's why, of course, last week we didn't get to talk to you because we were still setting stuff up and it just wasn't all working.
I sat by the phone waiting for you, Mick, but it never came, but that's fine. That's fine. I listened to you on the radio and it was great.
Oh, cool. Well, we did sort of put the call in many times over. It just sort of, on our end, it didn't answer. I think it sort of rang through. But anyway, it's all working well now, and it's great to have you here, Mark. Now, Mark, I've got to sort of mention to everybody, you used to be an atheist. Now, that's... Yep.
Yep, no, I did. Absolutely.
Now, that is extremely interesting, considering now you're really promoting the gospel. You're working with Creation Ministries International. And I noticed in your biography, if you don't mind, I'll read this little bit out because I thought it was intriguing. After many years as an avowed atheist, Mark married Cheryl and the couple adopted 3 Russian orphans. Mark returned to the faith in the late 1990s when confronted by the fact that he couldn't believe the children he was raising could possibly be a result of random chance. Can you unpack that one for us, Mark?
Thinking back on it, as an evolutionist, why would an evolutionist take on somebody else's children? It doesn't make sense. My wife and I, we couldn't have children ourselves, and the opportunity came up for us to travel to Russia to adopt children there. We went to Russia probably 3 or 4 times, actually, and ended up with 3 gorgeous kids. It was something that we talked about when we first got married, even though I didn't have a faith at the time. My wife did. It was something we talked about. He said we'd like to have a couple of our own and then adopt some as well. But it just, as I say, it does not make sense in an evolutionary worldview at all.
Mm. Now, you mentioned the words random chance. It's something that we hear a lot from, evolutionists. Everything, as far as they're concerned, is random chance, and here we are. But in this case, what was the random chance that didn't make sense?
It's interesting, isn't it? My wife and I, one evening we had this huge argument, and being the man of the house, I looked for somewhere dark to hide. And I went upstairs and I sat down and I was just leaning against the wall in my eldest son's bedroom, and I was listening to him breathe. And for some reason, I started to think about what it was I was listening to. And my science training, my evolutionary beliefs, basically told me that I was listening to just chemical reactions. That's all it was. That's all that my son was. And in an instant, I realized I couldn't believe it anymore. And the funny thing is, I went down to see my wife, and she'd been trying to convince me to do an alpha course, actually. And I'd been resisting, and I went down to see her after this little revelation in my son's room, and I said to her, that course you want me to do, I'll do it. And her response was, don't you think you're going to get round me that easily? So whatever the argument was about, it was a big one. Neither of us can remember what it is nowadays, but she was... she was not happy with me, that's for sure. And even the thought that I might go on a Christian course wasn't enough to keep her happy.
Wow.
So the random chance, we are basically, evolution tells us that we are just the result of chance. Everything about us is just chemical reactions. Every thought we've ever had is just a chemical reactions going on in our brains. And, people out there will be saying that's ridiculous. And I agree, it is ridiculous. But it's no longer my worldview.
Now, you also mentioned in your biography that your faith was pretty much shattered because of the secular education system. Now, that's something that, a lot of young people have to deal with going into, a higher school system and also the university systems, I guess, in your country and our country and any country, because of all this stuff that they're hearing about. Hey, we're just a big, we're something that's just gone wrong. We're just this random chance chemical reaction. And, this was obviously thrown at you because you were studying chemistry.
Yeah. And you know what? Our young people are not stupid. If you tell them that they've come from nothing, that they're just the result of an accident or random processes, that when they die they've got nowhere to go, that's it, they're dead, then that's going to affect how they live their lives. And I was raised in a Christian home, but my parents didn't really take the Bible seriously. In fact, my mum was a science teacher, and she taught and believed in evolution and the long ages. And I think even before I'd left home, I'd worked out that what I was learning in church and what I was learning at school just didn't gel. And when I left home and went to university, like so many young people do, I decided I wanted to live according to my own rules. And the easiest way to do that was just to abandon my faith. And that's what I did, Nick. And for 20 years, I lived as an atheist. I made the wrong decision back then. And I lived 20 years going down completely the wrong track. And part of my passion for Creation Ministries is that we have answers to the questions that young people ask. I mean, when I was at home, I would have questions, and nobody was able to give me the answers. Questions about, where did Cain find his wife? Those sorts of questions. Nobody had answers for them, for those questions for me. Creation Ministries has those answers, and it means that young people who are being attacked at school with all this evolutionary education, all this indoctrination, they have somewhere to go to get answers to the questions that are troubling them.
What sort of stuff used to get thrown at you at university?
Oh, good grief. Well, I'm in the chemistry department. All the lecturers were, as far as I know anyway, evolutionists. And by then I think I'd really pretty much abandoned my faith. So it didn't really affect me that much at all. But I have a lot of friends at the university who were Christians. And I would challenge them, I would ask them questions about how they explained various things. They didn't have answers. So at university, not an awful lot was thrown at me, to be honest, because I'd already walked away from it, and I wasn't willing to really to confront those sorts of things at all.
It's intriguing that you studied chemistry, which is one of the hardest subjects for young Christians to sort of plough through because of all this chemical reaction and that's all we are type stuff being thrown at you. But, years later, were you working sort of within the I guess, chemistry in your job for a number of years before you then came back to Christianity?
I did for a while, and eventually I moved away into sales and marketing. So by the time I came back to faith, I was actually running my own business, and it was completely unrelated to what I'd learned at university. So there wasn't really that sort of pressure on me at all. It wasn't like I was working in academia at the time, so that I had to justify my beliefs to other academics. So I didn't come under that sort of pressure. But there are a lot of scientists who have Christian beliefs who almost have to hide those beliefs because in the academic world, they can lose their jobs. It's happened to quite a few scientists in Christians within the scientific world, where they express their beliefs, and all of a sudden they find that they're being marginalized, and a number have actually lost their jobs because of their faith.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we've got to go into a little break now, but that is intriguing. That is very interesting. Mark is from Creation Ministries International. He's in New Zealand at the moment. He's here to answer any questions that anyone might have, particularly if you've got any questions maybe about, about youth and study, and I guess youth these days is a big topic. We might come back and talk a bit about that, Mark, very shortly. If you do have any questions, though, please just send them through to our text line, 0401 949 949. And he's with Creation Ministries International, a Bachelor of Science with honours in Organic Chemistry, and another brilliant mind from Creation Ministries that we get to talk to pick his brain a little bit and, find out how you tick, Mark. It's great to have you here today, and it's been very interesting. I realise that you have a bit of a heart for the youth. And, it's interesting because obviously you went through that part of your life and fell away from your Christian beliefs. However, now you seem to have, I guess, a bit of a drive to try and help young people. And I guess a question I have for you is, how can young people these days defend their faith?
It's not easy, Mick. A lot of these young people, they're in state schools. The youth who are in Christian schools obviously find it easier, but a lot of our youth are in state schools. And actually, there was a situation recently where I believe a leader of a youth group contacted our office to say that most of the youth in that youth group were actually in a Christian school, and they got a new science teacher, and the science teacher was telling them that evolution was true and that the Bible couldn't be trusted. This was within a Christian school. And this youth leader was really concerned because his youth group had virtually halved in size in a very short period of time because of what these young people were being taught at school. So it's not easy. And what I would say, the first thing, and obviously it's important that the parents, good Christian parents, realize what's happening with their kids at school and don't leave them in a situation where they can't defend themselves. The resources that we produce, there's a lot of books, a lot of videos. We have animations of various machinery within cells on our website. All of these things can be used to strengthen a young person's faith. But the important thing is that these young people go looking for this sort of information and make the most of it, because there is so much information that we can provide now from Creation Ministries that is it boosts young people's faith and gives them the opportunity to defend their faith when it comes under attack.
I came from a non-Christian background, and I know other people that I know very well. They've come from a Christian background, and it seems that when you come from a non-Christian background, when that stuff gets thrown at you, it does send you into sort of downward spirals in many ways. When you hear teachers talking like that, particularly if they're your science teachers, or in my case, it happened to be an English teacher who, because we didn't have any scripture teachers, she took our scripture class, and in scripture she taught us how there was no God, and it's more difficult for kids who haven't had a Christian upbringing. How do they defend their faith?
So you're telling me you were at a state school as you were growing up?
Yep.
And you had scripture lessons in a state school?
Yep.
That's amazing, because I would imagine that that's not the case nowadays. It's certainly not the case over here, that's for sure.
Yeah, some state schools still have scripture. It's not something, see, back in my day when I went to school, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. We all had to go. If Scripture was on you all had to go. There was not like any options, whereas today you've literally got to have parents approve you signing into Scripture, I believe. So it's certainly a lot harder these days to get into Scripture. But
yeah,
I mean, for young people who come from non-Christian homes, you know, even if they've somehow sort of turned to faith through friends or through, in my case, it was I got dragged along to a Billy Graham crusade. I think that was when I first sort of put my hand up and walked out the front. But that sort of thing does happen still. And whilst it does happen, you know, there's a lot of parents out there that say, oh, okay, well, we can try and set our children up so as they don't fail. But what about the people that come from, you know, non-Christian? I guess there is your website, creation.com, which has thousands of pages of information where young people can go and get fed the answers. But I guess it's harder and harder now to get pointed in the right direction, isn't it?
It definitely is. And it can cause tension within a home. I mean, if a young person has come to faith in a house where their parents don't have faith, it can cause tension. And where young people don't have that sort of support within their home, obviously they've got to go looking for support within a church or through their Christian friends. You're right, but our website is probably the best resource that we have for those sorts of young people, because all the information on creation.com is absolutely free. So they're not going to be relying on their parents to buy them books or buy them resources like that. They can go in, they can go to creation.com, they can there's a search function so they can type in any questions that they have, and it'll bring up all the articles that relate to that topic, so they can find information there. And I think for young people who are in that situation, if you've come to faith in a household that isn't a Christian household, then I would strongly recommend that you go to creation.com because a lot of the questions you might have will be answered there, and it's very faith-affirming.
Yeah. I actually noticed on the creation.com website, it was actually it's still there, I'm just looking now. You guys have a thing on Friday the 16th of June, the world's smallest electric motor. And it's actually a presentation by Professor Steve Taylor. And I assume being in chemistry or having been in chemistry, you'd know what the world's smallest electrical motor is, Mark?
I'm sure it's referring to the ATP synthase motor. Would that be what they're talking about, Nick?
Actually, I can see those words there. I have no idea what they mean, but I can see those words there, yes.
I do a lot of talks to youth groups and to schools, and a big focus of the talks that I do is on the incredible machinery that we're starting to find within cells, and particularly within human cells.
Yep.
And the ATP synthase motor, it is the smallest motor known to man. It is the most efficient motor known to man. Most electric motors, as they get smaller, they get less efficient. Mm-hmm. The ATP synthase is so small that 100,000 of them would fit side by side in a millimeter.
Wow!
But they're virtually 100% efficient. And these motors produce a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is the energy currency for all living things. And to give you an idea of just how important this molecule is for our bodies, each person produces around about half their body weight in ATP every single day using these machines, and then they use that amount of energy every day. So half our body weight in these molecules is produced and used every single day, and that's what keeps us alive. And these machines are they look like an electric motor, exactly how we would design an electric motor.
But surely they can't be that complex.
They have rotors, they have bushes, it's just fascinating to watch. Again, if you go to our website and go to the media section and just put ATP synthase, then the animation of this motor in action will come up and you'll get to see exactly how this thing works. And it is just a wonder to behold. And these things are operating inside us. These machines produce, each cell produces about 1 million of these molecules per minute, I think it is. It's just incredible how these things work within us.
So not something that you would assume could just randomly, by chance, sort of create itself?
It is impossible that this could recreate itself, because if evolution created this thing, then each stage of its development would have to have some sort of use. But if you take one component out of this motor, it doesn't work. It wouldn't work. So what was this thing evolving from if it wasn't actually doing what it does today? It just doesn't make sense. When you look at this machinery, and there is so much machinery, we have quite a few animations on our website showing a lot of different machines inside cells, and every one of them is just a wonder to behold. And it screams design. It screams intelligent design, and intelligent design of the highest caliber. These motors are so much more efficient, so much smaller, so much better than anything our human motor designers have been able to develop. What it tells us is that the designer of that particular motor is the most amazing motor designer there could possibly be.
So let's just say I could somehow get something microscopic and just reach into this center of this little tiny machine that evolutionists would tell you was made by chance, and just took like one single part out of the middle and put it on the end. Would it still work? It
wouldn't. It would be like if you did that with an electric motor. You take one component out, an electric motor isn't going to work. All the components that are there for a reason, for a purpose. And if you take one of those components out, the motor might still work, but it certainly wouldn't be working as well as it would with all the components in place. And very likely it wouldn't work at all. And it's the same with the ATP synthase motor.
What's the chance if I had all the parts for the ATP synthase motor, put them all into like a little tiny box and shook the box like 1 million times and then stopped? Is there any chance that they could just all fall into place?
You know what, Mick? Do you want to try it? You could try it with all the parts of an electric motor that's been created by a human being. You could have all components there, but you do realize you've got to shake the box, and that all components have to come together, but it also has to be plugged into the electricity as well. It has to be plugged into a source of energy. So it's not just the machine that's got to come together. It's got to have a source of energy. It's got to be in the right place. And it's got to be doing what it's supposed to do. So, no, it's not going to work.
I guess that's like saying, hey, I've made a motor and it sits on a rock. Well, what does it do? It just does motoring. It doesn't actually do anything else. It has to have a purpose, really, doesn't it? Well, look, that is a creation.com event. It's actually on Friday, the 16th of June at 4:30 a.m. for anyone who is up at that time of the morning. It looks pretty cool. It's called the World's Smallest Electrical Motor, and it is a live presentation. You can ask questions at the end of that. Of course, we've come to the end of our time, Mark, and wow, how interesting. Now I know what ATP synthase is. I had no idea what that was before. And it's been...
I would encourage your listeners to log in and watch that presentation, because they will be astounded.
Yes, well, I'm even thinking of doing it myself. I mean, it's on a Saturday, so why not? I can always just wake up, watch it, and then go back to bed afterwards. It's being a Saturday, I can sleep in a little bit. Yes, well, thank you, Mark. We really appreciate your time. I believe we've got you in the schedule for again later this year.
You have, yes. I think sometime in August.
That's exciting. That's awesome. And our apologies for not being able to host you last week, but it's been fantastic having you, and we look forward to the next time that you're with us.
Thank you, Mick. It's been a pleasure.
You're on 94.9. It is 9 minutes to 5.